Welcome to Lesson 13. In this lesson, we're going to depart from if statements for a little bit and discuss something called loops. Loops allow us to repeat code over and over again, which again, for certain tasks, that would be very convenient than having to copy and paste the code a bunch of times. So let's get to it. Let's just clear this out. So every language uses the word for to identify one type of loop. Now the syntax of what comes next, it's a little bit different. So I'm just going to kind of immerse you in it first. In range, let's just say 9. So this is your basic for loop. That it starts with the word for, and then there's some kind of clause here that kind of specifies what you're iterating for. Again, I'm going to do it more by example, and then we'll explore it. So much like the if statement, it terminates with a colon because notice how it indents a little bit. The code that's indented now becomes the code that gets repeated. So we're going to do something simple in there. We're just simply going to say hello. And there you go. Now, if you count, you will see that we should have 9 hellos. So now hopefully you start to make the connection as to what that 9 means. The 9 used like this means repeat the code 9 times. So if I were to decrease this to something smaller, let's say 3, there you go. I only get 3 hellos. Now, these are small numbers, but imagine having to do something 1,000 times, 100,000 times, 1,000,000. Well, when you get to big applications, you might be running processes over that many number of times. So having a loop that can repeat a piece of code over and over again becomes very useful. All right, so obviously we can see here we could print stuff. And I'm going to keep it simple in that all we're going to do is print. I'll terminate with maybe a little more of an advanced example. But in future videos, you're going to explore other ways of using the for loop. So instead of doing hello, this I is actually a variable. It stores a value. So let's see what values it stores. Okay, so as the loop goes, you can see that the variable I, which is what we're printing out, became 0, 1, and 2. 3 numbers. Well, hopefully the 3 numbers is not a surprise to you. That's what the loop does. We saw that. But the numbers might be a little bit confusing. Using the for loop like this, we will start at 0 and count off 3 numbers. So we don't actually get the 3. So if you actually wanted to have the 3, you would actually have to increase this to 4. But you got to be careful with what the purpose of your code is. Because, yeah, we got the 3, but now we got 4 numbers. So there is another way to handle this. So what we could do, we could put a number in front which says, okay, start here and end here. So let's see what happens with this one. Okay, so notice the 4 is still not included. We kind of saw that. It's called exclusive. The endpoint is exclusive. It doesn't get included. But now we're able to modify what the first point was, which is we wanted to start with 1. Not necessarily start with 0 and then get 3 numbers. Okay. We can also, adding on to this syntax, so this becomes, when you use 2 numbers, this is the start, this is the end, -1. And then we could add one more thing to it. And again, the nice thing about replit is that it kind of gives you a little hint as to what the different parts are. So we got a start, a stop, a step. A step means how much you increase by. So you can see here we've been increasing by 1 each time. Well, what if we wanted to increase by 2? There you go. So starting from 1, we went 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Now, you might say, well, what happened to the 10? Because the next number is 11. Exactly. The next number is 11, but we said we only want to go as far as 10. So the 10 doesn't get displayed, nor does the 11. So I'm going to go back to our simpler example. Because now I want to show you that because this is a variable, we can do things with it. So remember that whole idea of doing a 1 in front so we don't get the 0? Well, we could also do it like this, where for every value, we're simply going to add 1 to it. Now, let me just review this, take a step back. We can see here this is printing out 0 to 4. So for each of these numbers, let's simply add 1. And now we get 1 to 5. So again, we can do math with our variables. Matter of fact, let's do some more sophisticated math. Let's do a multiplication by 2. So if you recall, this is going to go from 0 to 4. So 0 times 2 is 0. Remember, this used to be a 1. Matter of fact, you know what? Might be easier for us to view it this way. So we're displaying the value of I and the value of I times 2. So when I is 1, I times 2 is 2. 2, 4, 3, 6, 4, 8. All right, so we can go do some cool things here. We can even go further. Why don't we do plus 10? All right. So now it's not only are we multiplying it by 2, now we're adding 10. Now the value of I still stays the same. The value of I will not change. But now the output does, in that for every number, not only did we multiply it by 2, we added 10 to it. So this can lead to doing a lot of calculations rapidly by the computer. So I'm going to leave this example up. But then I want to go over a slightly different way of using the for loop. So notice our numbers have been going in an increasing fashion. There is a way for us to do the for loop backwards. So we're going to do for in range. So let's say we start at 0, but now we want to end at negative 10. Okay, so for us to get from 0 to negative 10 means we have to go backwards. So when you go backwards, you kind of have to specify the 3 parameters to the for loop. So we're going to do a simple example here. It's just simply printing out I again. And you can see it starts at 0, and then as our step says, we're going to decrease by 1 each time. So it goes to negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. And we can still do the same multiplication. I'll multiply by 3 this time. And I'll add by 5 for whatever reason. Actually, no. Yeah, add by 5. Okay, so you might say, wait a minute, we got a positive number here. Remember, the first number, and I'll do it again. Let's display the value of I. Remember, the first number is 0. So 0 times 3 is 0, and then we're adding 5, so that's how we ended up on the positive side again. Same thing for the value of negative 1. Negative 1 times 3 gives us a negative 3, but now we add 5 to it, so we're on the plus side again. Again, let me take the plus 5 out. It might be a little simpler to run this example first. That way all the numbers are negative minus 0. So I guess what I'm showing here is you could do a lot of creative things with the I variable, with the loop variable. It's just a matter of what the scenario dictates. And that's what you're going to explore in the activity associated with this lesson. You know, different ways of using the for loop to do things. Right, so let's go back to our presentation. And in this lesson, we started exploring the for loop, just basic syntax. How to go forward, how to go backwards, how to specify the start and end points, and how to jump between the numbers. So it's not always increasing by 1. We're going to be dealing with the for loops over a couple lessons. With each lesson, you know, exploring another application of the for loop. So enjoy.